So this here is a video for our Lord of Contagion, and as you can see, the final result is in front of you. Now, we're pretty happy with the way he turned out, but if you want to paint one, or if you have one similar hanging around, this is actually the Lord Felthius model with a swapped Deathguard head. The color scheme works for most of the other Lords of Contagion. So if you want to make up one like this and you want to paint one similar, please feel free to stay tuned. Leave a like or a comment on the channel if you like these. Or subscribe, which is even better. And otherwise than that, stay tuned and we will show you how we painted him up. This is our video on how to paint our Lord of Contagion. And this is the Felthius model, but we removed his goofy bald head and put a Deathguard helmet in place. So now he looks quite like a Lord of Contagion. And then they've got new rules for him in 9th edition in the new codex. That allows him to use the sphere that he's got on his hand here as well. So with that, we've got an ideal model to use as our Lord of Contagion. So the first thing we did with him is we base coated him with some Deathguard green spray can. So that got us where we're at so far. And then our first color we're going to do, we'll probably do the armor first just because he's predominantly green, and then we'll come through and do the cloaks and capes and details afterwards. So we're going to dry brush like all our other Deathguard models. We're going to dry brush on some Nurgling green here. And it'll just create a edge highlight, but it'll also hit some of the flatter areas. So we'll just dry brush that over all the armor right now. Don't worry where we usually put the shade on first. In this case, we're going to put the highlight and then shade later with the dirty Agrax Earthshade just to make them kind of scummy looking. So we'll do that now. I'll be back here in a few minutes once that's finished. So this is our Lord of Contagion now that we finished with the Nurgling green. So as you can see, we've added quite a nice little bit of two-tone color. There's some edge highlights along these armor plates, along the arms and along the legs. So with all that finished, we're going to do the trim now. It's got Cataphractii Armour, so he's got the trim along the shoulder pads as well as along all the breastplates here, as well as along the legs, and then along the shoulders and all along the back architecture here. We're probably going to do the incanter type incense holders here on the top of the blade. So we'll do all of that stuff with some BALTHASAR gold as a base, and then we'll come through and shade that afterwards once we're finished with all the similar colors. So we'll do that now and be back here in a few minutes. So this here's our Lord of Contagion now that we finished with all the BALTHASAR gold trim. As you can see, we did these, the top of the scythe here, as well as all the trim on the armor, the Cataphractii Armour here, as well as the globe here, and all of the trim on the back here. So we did all that with our BALTHASAR gold, and we're ready to move on to our next color. So our next color is going to be this RAKARTH flesh, and we're going to do it in a few places. We're going to do all of the bony processes here, all over the back of the armor. As well, we're going to do the inside of the cloak here, because it's going to be a little bit of regal white, except we'll make it dirty by the end of it. So we'll do all of that now. And don't forget the infold here, and be back here in a few moments once all of those processes are done, and you'll see exactly how far we went. So be back in a few minutes. So this here's our Lord of Contagion now that we finished with the RAKARTH flesh bone. And as you can see, we did all of these processes up the top, as well as the cloak. We also did the handle of the scythe here. And then any place where the cloak overlapped or it was exposed on the back, we did that as well. So that finished up our RAKARTH flesh. So for our next thing we're going to do, we're almost ready for a shade. But I think what we're going to do is do some of the metallics as well. So we're going to take a little bit of Leadbelcher here. And we're just going to do any of these vents, some of these tubes, some parts of the scythe here as well. We'll probably come back and rust that later. And then we'll do some of the chainmail here. And then anything else, these tubes that are coming out the back here, as well as this cord here. Things like that. So we're going to do all that now and be back here in a few minutes. So this here's our Lord of Contagion now that we finished with the Leadbelcher. So we did just the armor here, as well as the parts of the scythe here, any mechanicals there. On the back we did the cable here, and then the smokestack vents. So with all that finished, I think we're pretty much ready to do some of the shades on our model now. So the first one we're going to do is some Agrax Earthshade. And that's going to be used on all of the bone processes here, as well as all of the green, Deathguard green, as well as all of the metallics. We'll probably put it on the handle of the scythe. And we'll do the back of the armor here as well. But what we won't do is the cloak, because that's going to get brighter. We don't need that quite as dirty. We did some tattered cloaks earlier, and I'll put a link in the bottom of the description just to how we did it, but we'll pretty much do the same thing here. We'll put a SERAPHIM SEPIA there when we get to it. But for now, we're doing Agrax Earthshade on all of the rest of the model. So we'll do that now and be back in just a few minutes. This is our Lord of Contagion now that we've finished with the Agrax Earthshade. And as you can see, all the details have really popped out here. It's much more prominent. So what we're going to do from there now is we're going to do the rest of the cloak that we skipped. So that's this part here, the back and the front, all of that area there. We're going to do that with the SERAPHIM Sepia we have. So we're just going to kind of just easily brush that right over there. And that'll create some nice folds and add a bit more of a reddish, warmish color, which will then bring forward to a lighter color. So we'll do that now and be back in a few minutes. This is our Lord of Contagion now that we finished with the cloak. So our next step we're going to do is to add a shade, or to add a layer paint actually, to both of these. So the cloak here, as well as all of the bone processes. So it's going to be the same one, it's just that the shade differs between both colors. So we're going to do a little bit of Screaming Skull, which as you can see will brighten up that cape a little bit, as well as add the brighter bone so it'll really stand out. So we'll do those now and be back here in a few minutes once that dry brush is finished for all that highlight. So this here's our Lord of Contagion, and it's coming along quite nicely. So from here, we're going to move on to some of the fleshy bits here. We've got these tentacles coming out of the legs, as well as on this side. And then we've got these tubes coming out of the chest piece here. So we're going to do those. And then we've got, that's pretty much it there. We've got another tentacle here coming off this leg tucked inside. But all that we're going to do with some fleshy bits. So we're going to start that with a base coat of BUGMAN'S Glow. And then that'll be our base for our fleshy bits. So we'll do that now and be back in just a few minutes once that's done. So this is our Lord of Contagion now that we finished with our BUGMAN'S Glow. And as you can see, we've done the tubing here as well as the tentacles, some more on the ground and some more on this leg. So we've brought out all the fleshy bits that we could. So what we're going to do now is shade them with some Reikland Fleshshade, and then that'll bring out some of the details that we see here, add some shading and some depth to it, and then we'll be back here in a few minutes once that's finished. So this is our Lord of Contagion now that we finished with the Reikland Fleshshade. So what we're going to do now is, now that we've added all the depth here, we're going to take a little bit of CADIAN FLESHTONE, and we're just going to dry brush that over these tentacles just to bring them out a little bit and add a little bit more depth. So we'll do that now and be back here in just a few minutes. So this here's our Lord of Contagion now that we've finished with the tentacles there. So what we're going to do now are these tubes that we hadn't done earlier. As well, there's one feeder tube coming down here. We're going to do all those in black or gray, I guess. So what we're going to do there is a base coat of ESHEN Gray, followed by another coat of just dry brush of DAWNSTONE over the top, just to add a 3D effect to those cables. So we'll do those now and be right back in a few minutes. So this is our Lord of Contagion now that we finished with all the extra cabling. And what we're going to do now is this little bit of loincloth down here. It's strands of material. We're going to do red. We could do purple, which would match the rest of our Plague Marines. but we're going to do it a little bit more red this time. So what we're going to do is use a base of Khorne red. Then we'll use a shade of Nuln Oil to darken it up. And then probably dry brush on another layer of Khorne red before we put some Evil Sun Scarlet on the edges there, just to bring that out a little bit. So we'll use those three colors in succession to kind of bring out this cloth here, and then we'll put some brass on these little flies on the bottom. So we'll do that now and be back in a few minutes once that's done. We'll also do these ones on the shoulders as well, and there's a couple over here and probably a couple hanging down over here, but the furs are in the way there. So we'll do those now, and that should make this model stand out a little bit, and be back in a few minutes. So this is our Lord of Contagion now that we finished with the cloak. And as you can see, we did the shoulder ones as well as the loincloth ones. And you can see the brighter red highlight there as well as all the shading. So with that done, we're going to move on to these boils here, this mark of Nurgle that he's got on his knee, as well as any other ones that are around the model anywhere. So we'll do those with some Ungor flesh, and then our normal Reikland Fleshshade, and then come back with Ungor flesh over the top again just to brighten it up. So we'll do those right now and be back here in a few minutes once that's finished. So back to our Lord of Contagion now that we finished with all the boils. What we're going to do now is deal with the insect moth that's on his chest piece. So we just finished the insect on the Lord of Contagion's chest piece. What we used was some Xandri dust, and then we did a little bit of Agrax Earthshade over the top of that to create the look that's there. It's a nice dirty insect, and it very well matches the rest of the aesthetic that we've got on the model. So we'll allow that to dry and be back in a few minutes. So our Lord of Contagion is carrying this giant Manreaper scythe here. So what we're going to do with that is we're going to paint the shaft brown or wooden if we can. So we're going to do a little bit of dryad bark as a base, which is wooden colored, and then a dry brush of Gorthor brown over the top of that, just to put the wooden highlights on it. So we'll do that now and be back in a few minutes once that's finished. This here's our Lord of Contagion now as we continue with our model. So our next step is going to be to do all of the slime hanging off of the orb here, as well as off of the Manreaper. So what we're going to do with that is start with a base coat of Niblet Green. Now it's a dry paint, but if we make it watery enough, it'll work. And then what we want to do is add a little bit of Moot Green as a highlight, and that'll bring out a two-tone effect on that slime and make it a little bit brighter. Now later we may put a dry brush of White Scar on it or something else, but for now we're going to do those three colors and be back here in a few minutes once we see how that looks. So this here's our Lord of Contagion now that we finished with the green slime. So we did that increasing Niblet Green into Moot Green into White Scar. So that really lit that up quite nicely. And then same on the Manreaper here. So our next thing we're going to do is the eyes. And he's just got those two little, one slit eye there, that binocular visor. So what we're going to do with that is make it some a green gem type look like the rest of our army. So just like before, Stormhost Silver with Waystone Green, we'll make that pop out, same as we did with our Plague Marines earlier. So we'll do that now and meet back here in a few minutes once that's finished. This is our Lord of Contagion now that the eyes are finished. So as you can see, our model's almost finished now. We've got a few more pieces left to do. We have the fur coat here, and we have the smoke up above. So we'll do the smoke first just because it's easier. So for the smoke, we're going to be very similar to the cloud of flies that we had with the Malignant Plaguecaster. So what we're going to do is bring this back to a white, and then we're going to add a couple of glazes just to sort of fog out the color and make it sort of putrid looking. So we'll use a White Scar to get it to white first, and then we're going to add a yellowish glaze. Now, it used to be Lamenter's Yellow, which has been discontinued. But there's a set of air paints clear, which are very similar to the original glazes. So we're going to use Sigismund yellow clear Imperial Fist type guy. And we're going to put that right over the white scar, and then that'll act as a glaze. Then we're going to come through with another 2 sets of colors and finish it off. So we'll do that now and be back in just a few moments. So this is our Lord of Contagion now that we finished with the glaze. So as you can see, we've got this mottled appearance here on the back. So what we're going to do on this smoke now is add a dry brush of Pallid Witch Flesh. And that'll add a lighter highlight layer with a little bit of a yellow component. So we'll do that now and be back in just a few moments. So this is our Lord of Contagion now that we finished with the Pallid Witch Flesh. And as you can see, we've added an extra sort of a cream color layered over the top here and dulled down a lot of the glaze that we'd used before. So our last step is to add a greenish glaze over the top. We're going to use Waywatcher Green, which has been discontinued, but GW has sort of replaced it again, very similar to the Sigismund yellow that we used. They also have a Mortarion Green clear air paint as well, which pretty much is the same as the Waywatcher Green, so you can use that as well. So we're just going to put that glaze right over this, and that will get our final product there, and then we'll come back and we'll start dealing with the coat. So we'll do that now and be right back in a moment. So this is our Plague Fumes finished. So now the last thing we're going to do is the cloak itself. So we're going to be a little bit inventive with this, I think. We're going to go with a purple type shade, but we don't want to stray too far from what's in the front here so it all matches. So I think what we're going to use is a Screamer Pink base, followed by a bluish Drakenhof Nightshade shade. So that purple and bluish color should get us a nice purple shade here. So this is the Lord of Contagion's cloak now that we finished with the Drakenhof Nightshade. So as you can see, we ended up with a very nice purple shade here. So we're going to dry brush over the top of that. There's many choices we can do, but I think we're going to use the Fang, which is a grayish purplish blue. And I think we're going to dry brush that lightly over the top here, just to add a little bit of paleness to the coat. And that'll probably be the end of that. We're also going to come through with some Ungor flesh in a bit and do all of the little maggot worms that are located all throughout this cloak. So we'll do all that, then we'll probably base him, and then we'll see what the final product looks like. So we'll see you in a few minutes. So this here's our Lord of Contagion now that he's finished. And as you can see, we managed to clear coat and base him and get all that sorted out. So if you like the way he turned out, please feel free to leave a like or a comment. Hopefully yours turned out as well as ours did. We're pretty happy with how it looks. It looks great on the tabletop. And yeah, so thanks for watching this far. If you want to see a few more angles or the back or the sides, we'll put some pictures up in a few minutes, and you can just scroll through those. Aside from that, we'll see you at our next video. Thanks for watching this far. We hope you have a lovely time painting, and we will see you at our next video. Cheers.